Hi, I'm Mimi Chan. Welcome to Culture Chat. Thanks for joining the conversation. Hi, everyone. It's the Mimi and Greg Show. This episode was recorded on November 5th. Greg, Rucka, and I discussed the mayhem of the 2020 election and how excruciating it is waiting for the results. We are both feeling a bit worn down from the turmoil of this week, but take comfort in the hopeful outcome and focus on the things we can control. Self-care, friendship, and gratitude are on the mind. I'm also excited about the Wallam Kung Fu of USA 50th anniversary virtual Kung Fu show on YouTube and my new position on the Orange County, Florida task force to combat youth gun violence. We know this week is a tough one. Take a breath and some comfort knowing you are not alone. There were a couple of spots in this episode where the internet was being mean, so I apologize for any audio issues you might hear. For those that don't already know, Greg Rucka is a New York Times bestselling author of hundreds of comics and nearly 24 novels. He's also the writer for the hit film The Old Guard starring Charlize Theron. I'm loving these conversations and hope you are too. They actually help keep me sane. If you're loving them as well, please rate my podcast on your platform of choice and share it with others. And if you'd like to support with a donation to help keep this podcast going, you can become a patron of the show by visiting my website or patreon.com/sifumimichan. For comments or suggestions, email me at mimi@culturechatpodcast.com or reach out on social media at sifumimichan. Now, on with the show. Hello, Greg.
Hello, Mimi.
So, what's new? It's been a really quiet week, right?
Yeah, absolutely nothing has happened. The people who I tend to trust in these things, say the ACLU, and so on, they warned us. They were like, dudes, this is going to take a while.
Mm-hmm.
And, we were talking before you started recording about the fact that there's this clip of Bernie Sanders' appearance from, I think, October 23rd on Jimmy Kimmel, where Sanders is literally, and it's apolitical. I mean, he leads into it as a political statement, right? Which is what he fears. And I suppose in that sense, it isn't apolitical because the core of what he's saying is that this election really is about whether or not our democracy is going to survive as a democracy.
Yep.
But he quite literally said, this is what is going to happen. He couches it as, I am afraid this will be what will happen.
Mm-hmm.
But, he says what will happen is that Tuesday night, before all the votes are in, Trump will announce that he has won.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he wakes up Wednesday to find that they've been counting ballots all night and he has lost the lead in say, these states in question, he will proceed to immediately announce that it is an issue of voter fraud.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're at the in-between moment right now. We're recording this, on Thursday. I believe we still have at least 4 states outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
Much of the Senate races have been decided. Not as I would have liked, but there still is a chance of Senate control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a chance. I mean, the fact that there's any underlying bit of hope this week is a lot more than I could have anticipated, just because I'm scared to hope, right? Like even Monday, I was scared to be hopeful because it's like having all your dreams crushed and ripped out and stomped on over and over. So I had to prepare myself, right? And so that was part of my self-defense mechanism.
There's non-hope. There's a saying in England, and it's been getting a lot of play because if you've watched the show Ted Lasso on Apple TV, they use it as well, which is it's the hope that kills you. But I don't know how it's going to play out. If Biden gets to 270, we're going to deal with all these court challenges, but I don't think Trump remains in office. And then we'll get, him triggering all of his lunatic followers. And by lunatic followers, I mean the followers that are lunatics.
Correct.
And, and then what's going to happen is going to happen. So we are still poised for a lot of pain and a lot of trauma in the next days, weeks, and frankly, months. But that said, the election has made several things really clear, and the question is whether or not they are going to be, if they can even be corrected, or if the best we're going to get is an attempted stopgap, that all a Biden-Harris administration buys us is a little time.
There's a few things there. I mean, one is I woke up Wednesday, even though it was better than waking up and seeing, oh, he won or something. Cause I pretty much did no news, no TV. No, I wasn't going to do it. I got updates because my friends text me. They're like, here's where we're at. I'm like, and like Florida has failed us again. And so, but I pretty much did the whole, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this to myself. And so waking up was a mixed batch of emotions because it was like, well, at least it's not 100% that it's done. But then when I like just attempted to look at the map thingy, which I always instill to this date, I'm like, well, what does that mean if it's 70% counted and then X amount to go? And I don't know. I'm not I'm into statistics, and then it's so hard to determine. So I called my friend who's a poli-sci guy, and he always helps me like remain calm.
He helps you through the crisis.
He does. And it's actually, ironically, it's Pete from Paper Asylum. So he's also one that owns that comic book shop that like sends questions. And he basically is like, look, here it is. We don't win elections on a TV schedule. There are a slew of them since the 60s that were not decided on election night. And this is this crazy COVID, whatever, with all the historic early voting. They're not going to be ready to handle what they're handling, but they knew this was coming. So it's just this perfect storm of an operational issue that will happen. And hopefully we can trust in the democratic process that this is how it goes. These votes are counted,
and that's the trick right there.
That's the trick right there. Can we
trust it?
And that was my question for you, because we're in this place where if it were a normal person we're dealing with, we know that we wait for the votes to be counted, and we're not Cinderella where he thinks apparently at midnight we all turn into pumpkins and all ballots must stop being voted.
Well, specifically, it's we stop counting when I can say I won.
Right, exactly. Like a 5-year-old on the playground. Like, I don't want to play anymore. I'm ahead now, or
exactly.
I know I'm about to lose.
I win.
Yeah, I win. Yeah. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. But he did also kind of help me do the breakdown of no. All these mail-ins to come, we need to be vigilant about, because they are all going to be for Biden. I mean, for majority, right? And because those are the people that believe COVID exists. Those are the people that were trying to help the process along by doing the early ballot thing. Unfortunately, in so many states, you're not even allowed to start counting till election day, and so that slows the process. But it's just this.
But that makes sense. It makes sense that you should not be voting until
election day.
The timer ends.
Right.
But that's the thing. And the phrase, and again, the ACLU was spreading this around on social media, which is, the election, voting ends on a certain day. The election doesn't. Right? The election has to go until that's resolved.
Yes.
So look, if you're asking, do I have faith in the democratic process? 50-50. And no. And I mean, and that's sad, right? That's sad, because the Republicans have now this goes back to what the GOP has done. And again, if you don't like hearing this, I'm sorry, listener, but it's the truth. Mitch McConnell in particular has worked very hard for the last 4 years, aggressively so, but throughout the Bush administration as well, to pack the courts with far-right conservative justices. Okay? So what, we don't know how this is going to shake out. I mean, I do think that the overwhelming truth of the election will triumph in the end. But now we're talking, this segues into a lot of the larger things that I've been thinking and feeling, because I've had multiple conversations since election night.
Shocking.
with friends and so on. And in the main, the thing that keeps coming back is that we live in two countries, that the system is broken, and that what this election indicates on its face is that not a majority, but nearly a majority of the American citizenry is fine with an administration that is ignored and denied a pandemic that is approaching a death toll of 250,000 Americans, that hit 100,000 new infections a day yesterday, that has illegally been separating families and quite literally putting them in concentration camps, and has been promoting the most undemocratic, un-American policies internally with regards to white nationalism, with regards to our white supremacist problems, with regards to our national terrorists here. They have no problem with all of that. And they certainly don't have a problem with the fact that that people of color are being hunted and killed by the police in many places.
Yeah, and it's not that they don't have a problem. Some people
No,
actually it's because of the racism that they are actually
they don't. But that's the baseline. They don't have a problem with it.
Yeah,
and many of them approve of it. And if you don't have a problem of it, that means you approve it.
Yeah, that's the part, though, that the deniers are like, well, no, I only care about policy, but they don't understand
bullshit.
that it's, you vote for racist policies, you're racist. They don't like to hear it.
And of course.
And I'm not, that's not who I am. I'm like, well, prove it.
But, okay, and this is the important thing. That number's actually lower than it appears on the basis of the polls and on the basis of this election. And the reason that number is lower, and this is important to remember, is that we are living in the results of the Republicans having spent 30, 40 years doing everything they can to consolidate and maintain power. They don't want to govern, they want to rule. And so this is the result of gerrymandering. This is the result of removing the Voting Rights Act. You get very different numbers in Texas if there isn't only one ballot box for each county. Okay. Yeah. And how Texas can dare call itself a member of the Republic with that, saying that they're Democrats, I don't know. I'm meaning Democratic. I don't get it. Right? You have literally made it as difficult as possible for people to vote. Okay. We have people who have been illegally purged from the rolls. We have no idea how many votes never made it. I mean, Florida is the walking, talking, fucking example of that corruption. And I got to tell you,
sorry
Mimi,
on behalf of Florida.
I am dead serious. You guys need to pack up. There are other places you could be because I hate to break it to you, your state's sinking both literally and metaphorically.
I know.
But this is the thing to remember, all right? And it doesn't absolve it, but it does inflect the discussion about what we have seen. The numbers we're seeing are not true numbers. They are numbers that have been actively controlled by the GOP. They have made it as difficult as possible for people who are inclined to vote against them to do so. All right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remember that. And if we have 40 million people in this country who did not vote in this election, the low-hanging fruit on that is, oh, well, they didn't want to. They couldn't be bothered. And that is not a necessary extrapolation. That may be true for a number of them, and even a vast number of them.
Yeah.
But if even 1/4 of that number, even if 10 million people wanted to vote and were denied it, that's 10 million votes. You know, if there are 140 odd, or 160 odd million eligible voters in the US, and 40 million of them didn't vote, that's not 40 million who are like, cannot be bothered.
Oh, no, definitely. Because I did an assistance for someone who was trying to vote and wasn't registered, and it wasn't easy to get him registered because, obviously they didn't have a driver's license. And then it was like, okay, we need to get you a state ID. And there's a lot of steps, and dealing with any government office, as everyone knows, is not always at the top of everyone's list. Let me go wait in line for half my day, or let me go and do these things and take time. They don't have the time to take off work to do this stuff. So if I hadn't intervened and go, well, let me get on the internet, we can do a mail-in, let's do this thing, we do it early.
They would not have been able to vote.
And I'm like, who has this assistance? It's not, there are people willing, but where do you find them if you don't know to look for them? And it's
so if you're going to say we are a representative democracy, then you need to let people vote. And the Republicans don't want people to vote.
Yeah, it's
they do. The voting is not your right. As far as they are concerned, voting is a privilege. And it is primarily a white male privilege, in fact.
Like so many other things they believe.
Well, and in that sense, that's what it was constitutionally. But, the Constitution isn't the rule book. The Constitution is the frame.
Yeah, it's the starting point, the catalyst.
And it is, and this is why the originalists piss me off so much, because it's like that is a fundamental misunderstanding of what the document is.
Right.
So, so to wrap this around, look, it is depressing that it is even this close.
Yeah.
But it is not an accurate. It is not an accurate metric of how the country feels, or so on. Now, all that being said, it's still clear that a vast majority of people have no problem with a homophobic, racist, xenophobic, pedophile who is a criminal, who is a thief, who is a Russian asset. They don't have any problem with that.
Right.
And and I had a friend reach out being like, I had a friend tell me that there are a group of evangelicals who are supporting Trump because they believe he's the Antichrist, and they're trying to bring about the rapture.
Oh boy.
And he was like, and I find that hard to believe, and I'm like, I don't.
Yeah, I don't either.
Don't.
That makes complete sense, actually.
We've had fundamentalists. Comey Barrett is a member of one of these cults, and they are cults. All right.
Yeah.
And they have been in Washington forever. And so the thing that always strikes me about that is these are the holy rollers and the Christians and so on. It is the most selfish thing in the world to want to bring about Armageddon. It is inherently a selfish act, because what it is saying is it's great for everybody who believes as I do. But the rest of you are all going to burn in hell. And it's like, really? That seems really un-Jesus-y to me.
It's all un-Jesus-y. It's the most hypocritical thing to be backing someone like 45 that literally stands for everything against any religious doctrine that says nice, like be nice to your neighbor, that whole like, golden rule thing, like that's kind of the basis of most religions, like be good. And he's just like the anti of that.
But if you chase that all the way down, I mean, it's just so, I mean, and more and more, I think this country is too big, and it needs to be broken up. And that we, as I said, we live in two countries, but we live in effectively three regions. Look at the electoral map, and you see them.
Yeah,
but and so
yes.
Fine. Let's set up three separate countries and call it the Confederation of North America.
Well, you can write a comic. You've already written a comic about the different areas. But here's the thing. Yeah. And Bill Maher said it. It was like, yes, but it's not like when we had the Civil War and it was literally a line and it was North and South. Pretty much there are some states that are extraordinarily red. I get that. But pretty much there's a lot of purple. So within each state, the lines are so crazy. Like I get that I'm in an oasis. Like if we look at Orlando as a test thing, and I'm just going to say it to all the listeners again, I apologize on behalf of Florida. However, my county and the one right next to me for the first time ever flipped the other county. Orange County always votes blue, like always. But we had historic turnout and then Seminole flipped. And that was kind of a big deal for this area, like the other county, right? So I get it's not enough yet, whatever. And I in 2016, Oscar and I are like, well, New Zealand was really nice.
Yeah.
They loved us there. And I know it's really hard to get into that country, but I think you and I might have I believe
shot. you guys could bring something to the New Zealand.
Right. That's what I thought.
I don't have.
I thought that we, of all people, have a good shot. Like as soon as they see America, they're going to go, but then, maybe if they get our photo and see our headline, they do martial arts and fitness and wellness.
We're going to open a school.
Yes. I thought, hey, but then the other part, thanks to you, it's like stay and fight, be an activist. This is the country my parents came to for the American dream. And then I feel a little bit that way also about Florida. Yes, it is sinking, right? But that's where we try to hopefully do the consciousness about climate change. But like I feel a little bit about that as well. Like, okay, so we are already rooted here, but literally like this week, Oscar and I are like, well, I mean, we could run shit from remote anywhere else, like as long as we have a good staff in place. Like we were literally like, maybe we shouldn't get out of here. But it's so conflictive. Like it's an emotional up and down, just like everybody else went through this week. But it is so frustrating. And I think Seth Meyer today was like, Florida, the low-key of elections is always, and I don't know why everyone always has some false hope they're going to do the right thing. Because, people are texting me, oh my God, it's so close. I'm like, it's not going to be. Someone will disappoint. I don't know who this time, but someone. And it was Miami-Dade this time. It was the Cuban population that the Republicans have been targeting for a year straight.
Yeah, and lying to.
Successfully so. And it sucks that the Democrats couldn't respond with proper education and correct information. You and I talked about misinformation, a bit ago.
They're great at it. I don't know. I don't know if the problems here are problems that are going to be solved anymore. And
well, that's chilling.
Look, that's where I am right now. And it may simply be because I have reached a certain age and I know that my value in the fight is not, I am not of an age where my boots are going to do any good on the ground, regardless of what the fight looks like. My contribution is always from where I am now to probably the end of my life is going to be in what I say and what I write and where I can give donations. And I do not see, especially if we don't have the Senate, the political will to correct the course.
Yeah, I listened to Ezra Klein and Chris Hayes was on, and he's like, well, I mean, it kind of really sucks because it's like, well, maybe we win the presidency, but have we lost democracy anyway, right? Because if we don't get the Senate, we're once again, like you said, at a stopgap. Well, what's going to happen? Is it just going to be
no? It's just all the
4
only thing
years of like not having to hear idiot on the news as much, but like
that's exactly what'll happen. Is that the Republicans will do what they have always done? They will block everything. They will prevent any governance from taking place. You know,
yeah,
it is. So
it's disheartening.
All it does is buy us a couple years while the Republicans go back to weaponizing stupidity and ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't have great faith. I mean, I really don't. All I see is us going, kids, so that buys us a little time.
Mm-hmm.
It just buys us a little time. Now, time is precious right now because we're running out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it never ceases to amaze me how resolutely people will vote against their own self-interest.
Yeah. Well, that's the misinformation, though. It's so easy to so easy to convince someone of something when you tap into their greatest fears. And that's really what they're very good at. And I kind of wanted to go back to what you were saying earlier, because I feel it. I'm with you with the ups and downs. And you, again, I always credit into actually making me a bit of an activist. And I think you don't put enough value on the whole pen is mightier than the sword bit. Like, I get that you're not going to go out marching in the streets, but the amount of influence and positive action that you do put into place through your writing, talking right now with me, and even if we are in an echo chamber and people listening are with us in our own echo chamber, I think keeping them motivated is a part of it.
Are you enjoying our echo chamber?
I just think, though, staying motivated is part of it, because a lot of us who feel and maybe have the same views doesn't mean they're not curled up in a ball and maybe can't get out of bed, but maybe hearing something sparks something and allows that. And I still have to believe that those are the strides that we need. And so I know you feel like, God, I'm exhausted, and like the fight in me is burnt out, but I know you, and I know you continue to write. We already talked about that. And no matter what, it always comes through in your writing, whether you want it to or not.
Oh yeah, no, I will. Yeah. I'm never not going to be angry.
Right. As David Walker said, well, Greg's always angry. It's just a matter of how angry he is.
It's his superpower. I'm tired.
I know.
I'm really tired.
I know.
And the fact is, like I said, I can look at it and I can logically say, these are not true numbers. But at the end of the day, like I say, we live in two different countries.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that, and this is, of course, is the problem. I believe in the main, what I think about how people should be treated and how we should be governed is correct.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that. Clearly, there's a whole lot of people in the middle of the country who don't. Actively do not. And how they got to be that way is of less interest to me at this point, because we are locked in we talk about the existential threat. We are fighting for our survival. And I'm not talking about as a nation. I'm talking about as a species.
Mm-hmm.
Humanity is going to go extinct at this rate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it is, it is not.
Oh gosh, but I know, because we both kind of have gone up and down with this. On one hand, we're charging full in, and the other hand, we're just so exhausted. But isn't it then up to the next generation to be the boots on the ground? I mean, you have two amazing kids that are of very informed and educated and have passion. And so isn't it then to the next generation? Like, I was actually thrilled with the handful of millennials that I have been in contact with versus last 4 years ago. The amount of interest in voting was much higher.
Look, that engagement is not to be ignored or taken lightly. I'm not discounting it. I think, like I say, I'm going to be 51 at the end of the
month.
Yeah. So when generation, I am of very concerned about what I am leaving though.
Yeah.
And so they're, of course they're going to fight. I know my kids and they're not alone. There's a reason why, so they're doing can. This goes back to saying 26, which was, we're looking at the last, in the monster movie, Godzilla will win, but half of Tokyo is gone either way. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're fighting dinosaurs, right? And they are not going to go quietly into the night. Mm-hmm. And the concern, in large part, is that they may have figured out a way not to have to go at all. They may get their constitutional Congress, right? They may be able to fundamentally change the rules of governing this country so that they are perpetually in power. Mm-hmm. And again, power, rule. They don't want to govern. They have no interest in governing. The system is so fucking broken right now. Mm-hmm. And it becomes so evident at moments like this. Now, Dems take the House. Biden has the balls. They make the moves. Robert Reich has got a lovely little video about, how to restore the democracy, mm-hmm. Grant statehood to Puerto Rico and DC. You have 4 new senators. Abolish the Electoral College, expand the court. Mm-hmm. And if you do those things, then you can get in there and you can go, we need a new fairness doctrine. Mm-hmm. We need to break up these tech giants. We need to establish communication standards. Right?
Yeah.
But it comes down to, one, getting the Democrats to all move in the same direction if they have the Senate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I don't know. I don't know. And that's the worst thing right now, is that we're looking at, the scale tip inexorably to Biden winning. Right. And all the strum and drang that will come around that, notwithstanding, that's what we're looking at. Because I don't think you're going to get, I think most of the gun-toting Trump supporters are bullies, and bullies are cowards. And when the army actually says, no, he won, they're not going to shoot at the army for the most part. There will always be idiots who think that, they want to die a martyr.
Die hard and yeah.
Right. But in the main, right? So, it comes down to the Senate again and again and again. Mm-hmm. And I knew McGrath wasn't going to beat Malone, but God, I wanted her to.
Oh, I know. I wanted it so bad.
And I recognize that I'm not, I don't live in Kentucky, and And perhaps, that means that my opinion on that race matters less, except he's the Senate Majority Leader. And the example I have heard is, if Trump is Vader, and that's very flattering to Trump,
Yeah.
McConnell is the Emperor.
Mhm.
And they do look a little alike.
Yeah.
It's like if Yertle the turtle was the Emperor.
I'm going to put pictures of that here for people, the
There
side-by-side
you go.
comparison. So we talked a lot about, obviously, the frustrations, the things we technically don't have control over. I mean, of course, Robert Reich's plan is great, and that we can like do our little small parts. Midterms is a huge one that I think, regardless of how long you and I podcast for, like, we need to come back and make sure that the month before we start hitting up so people understand, hey, this is why we can't get shit done ever, because nobody comes out for the midterms. But hopefully that narrative changes. But in terms of, for me, I know that what's helped me through this week and continues to is, that whole stoicism, which is the only thing I have control of is how I react to XYZ, and what I can do is not even control my thoughts, but my reaction to those things. Right. And so, like, limiting my intake and all the things that we always talk about, which is self-care. And so I was curious for you, like, what, I know we do a lot of self-care, you and I, but, and it may seem redundant because we talk about it all the time, but I think people kind of need to hear, like, here's things that we should be looking towards in terms of positivity and being able to wake up and function the next day. And as abysmal as it is, there's always a bit of light, because it's a new day, right? And so there's something that we can do. So I honestly, actually, I had sent you, but I sent you another little care package, but I was like, no, don't send it, because I don't want to fuck up the mail. I want to make sure all votes or whatever. So don't send anything till, the following week after the election, when there's no like chance of whatever. So sorry, your care package has not arrived. I wanted it there for this week.
It's okay.
But I was like, I don't want to be one of those people that's causing more delays in the mail. So I was like trying to be really conscious of that. But yeah, what kind of things like have you done? Because even as down and out as you've been up and down, you're here, and
yeah, I mean, it is up and down.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. Okay, so let's. I don't know if this is TMI or not, and I don't really care, because we long since passed that. I woke up yesterday. Okay, so election night, we had two friends come over, a couple. They called in the evening, and I had turned off, and I still have off, all of my news alerts on my phone. I didn't want to see anything because it wasn't going to matter.
Right.
I knew intellectually this was not going to be over, at least until today, if not tomorrow. And that's just on the count. I'm not talking about the fallout.
Exactly.
But knowing that intellectually did not keep me emotionally from like having nearly 2 panic attacks and so on. So I had gotten online, and I was talking to a friend, and we were playing a game together. And then Jen says, Jen and Aaron are coming over. So it's all right. So we've been living, since all the COVID stuff began, we've really been living in a very small bubble. We don't have a pod. It's the house. That's it.
Yeah.
And so, this couple has been living much the same way. So it was like, you know what? Sure. If we're going to break the pod open and put 2 more people in it, come on in. So we sat out, we put a fire in the fire pit, and, we sat out and talked, and we drank a little alcohol, and and we shared what we were feeling. And it wasn't like, let's all talk about it. We just, we're talking about it. And that got us through the night.
Yeah.
And I woke up Wednesday morning, and I woke up pretty early because we'd been up pretty late. And, I get my coffee, and I open up the New York Times, and I just remember that the feeling that hit me was such dread and anxiety, that it was physical. It was in my leg.
Yeah.
And and I, for the first hour or so of my day, I was like, this is just not good. And I found myself having to repeat to myself as I was going sort of up and down the stairs, do not despair, do not despair.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up calling up one of my oldest best friends. I mean, he and I met my freshman year in college.
Yeah.
And he is, and always, I mean, will always be one of the smartest people I've ever known. I mean, he is razor sharp and is pretty good at reading politics, and I called and I was like,
yeah.
And he was like, I'm not, and he was like, this is what I'm not worried about. This is where my concern is now. And just talking about it, was enormously helpful. And that I had gone on a walk. So I went on this long walk, most of which was spent talking to him. That was about 2.5 miles. And then when I got home, I went for a 2-mile run. So by the end of the day, I was okay.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that it leads into for me in part, right? I felt actually at a moment yesterday where I sort of could feel the tension leave me, and had this moment of being like, we're going to be, Trump is going to be gone one way or another. And that is, you got to remove the tumor before you can heal the rest of it. So, we're living in Portland right now. We're hyper vigilant because there is a legitimate threat of violence, and everybody here knows it. That Washington State has, and Eastern Oregon has some really whacked out people who think that this is their moment to go to war, and they have decided that Portland is where they want that. So it's a weird place to feel this tension going away and then having to go, no, you got to remain vigilant a while longer.
Yeah.
And that goes to the exhaustion. Yeah. So, I mean, yesterday was all self-care. Yesterday was, I did no writing. I watched a Champions League game, and I did this walk, and I went for the run, and, I was with Jen and I was with Dash, and, I watched the Timbers play last night. And so that's my self-care right now, is just what do I need to get moment to moment. And a big part of that self-care is not overwhelming myself with information. I do not need to. Jen turned on MSNBC last night around 6:00, and all it is, is them, because they've got to stay on, they've got to keep broadcasting, but there's no new information.
But there's nothing. Yeah, everything's like at a halt.
So they're repeating the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing as doom scrolling, as far as I'm concerned.
I feel like the news channels needs to have like the old, school theater movies where they have like just the orchestra playing for the intermission. Be like, you know what? There's no update. Yeah. So why don't you all meditate right now and have some peaceful
breathe.
Some ocean sounds, and like all the news stations should just like agree. All right, we're going to shut down for 20 minutes because there's nothing. And so they can go on the interwebs and find what they need. That would be amazing, but that'll never happen, obviously. But yeah, it was a lot of the same for me. It was like, that's why I had to make that call first thing in the morning, and then it just kind of set me up for the rest. But it is super jarring, and I think that the whole leading from COVID into this has made it exponentially worse, because we are more disconnected from our loved ones and family and friends than we would normally be. And so it's like, oh my God, it's a special occasion. I'm going to see two humans, I mean, it was like a big deal. Right. And so I mean, we're the same way. Pretty much no one's come in my house, but of course I have a work pod. I'm outside. I have to see people, but it's definitely been talking to people that have that narrative of being able to keep me calm, and they're able to explain things clearly and just have these conversations where we're like, yeah, you know what, it is going to be okay no matter what. And that's always helpful. And I looked forward to this conversation. And then I told you I woke up at like 4 a.m. yesterday, because sometimes I just wake up and I'm like, I'm not going to check the internet. I'm not going to look. So I read Lazarus instead, because my book club's starting it. Like they're starting it.
I was wondering why you were. I was wondering why you were up so early. So.
Yeah. So I wake up and it's sometimes that's part of my anxiety, is like the insomnia, and I'll just wake up and then. Lately it's been, let me fantasize about where I can't go visit. So I'll look up like world's best hotels in blah, blah, blah island in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, well, I'm never flying there, but let me see what's there, and just fantasy stuff. But even that, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to read. And so I have like a slew of things. I finished Sex Criminals and, so it's been, let me catch up with that. And that's been helpful to have, but I had to kind of plan, like it's all loaded on my iPad. I know where I'm going to, and that way when it starts, I have these things ready, like accessible. But that's me. I'm kind of a planner that way. But yeah, these conversations help. And I think listeners for sure, don't be afraid to not just stay like in the ball. Like I think talking about it, I mean, it works for me, but I don't know about everybody else. But yeah, I think we all have to kind of be moving forward and doing less news for sure.
Yeah, no, it's not going to do us any favors right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're talking about self-care, then part of that is in the same way that self-care is, do not expose yourself to COVID needlessly, right? Needlessly, don't decide, what, mask bullshit, or I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to lick every surface, right?
Yeah, nobody would do that, but yet it's pretty much the same thing, right?
It's basic self-care, and if we're going to include in basic self-care, then maybe it's okay to say, you know what, I'm deleting Instagram from the phone today.
I did that too. Yeah.
Or I'm going to, like I said, I turned off. I have New York Times, Washington Post,
mm-hmm.
and The Guardian
mm-hmm.
all on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all set up to push alerts.
Oh.
And I turned every single one of them off Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
I just was like, this isn't going to do me any good, because if my phone keeps going off or my watch keeps going off saying, oh my God, the poll closed. It's like, well, yes, that's not news, guys.
Yeah.
That's not news. I'm aware.
And not to bring it back to anything negative, but I was like, oh my God, did you see how, I guess because they thought it worked in 2000 at the recounts, but like people are literally like hounding and protesting and mobbing the poll places to try to stop ballot counting. And this is exactly what this leader person that is going to lose did, is make people think that this is they actually don't know how elections work. Like that's the problem, is for them to actually do that, they actually believe, or are just like him with the, I'm not going to go down, I don't want to lose, but like they actually think that there is an issue and they're trying to stop ballot counting. I mean, I don't know. I feel like there's so much misinformation. Like, how do we not know that when you vote, that vote gets counted? Like, how is that not public knowledge?
Yeah. And why is that so frightening?
Right?
I mean, what's going on that you're so terrified that the vote's going to get counted?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wish I had some wonderful insight. We are in a holding pattern right now.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to have to wait. Yeah, it is. And it is purgatory.
It's so purgatory.
It is. It is a holding.
Yeah.
So, we got to get through.
Yeah, we got to get through. I know my friends like, when are you going to feel better? I'm like, maybe on Inauguration Day when I actually see Biden getting sworn in and like that's actually happening, I might feel better then. Might.
It'll be a while.
I'm like, it might. Because my cousin asked me, he goes, oh my God, so what if he loses and then, it's all going down? Is he just going to like go nuts in the next 2 months and try to do all this crazy? I was like, probably. I was like, then he's not going to want to leave and the Secret Service is going to actually have to physically escort him out. And I was like, are they going to do that? And then I'm like, well, they are mad at him after the whole week.
No,
he's
he's not allowed to be there.
Yeah.
He will have to leave.
Yeah.
I suppose I'll leave you with this one.
Yeah.
Which is one of the last things I saw on Instagram before I was like, we are going on hiatus on social media, was a post from an account called Middle Aged Riot, which I really, really adore. And I'm trying to figure out exactly how it was phrased. It was something like Trump isn't acting like a guy who wants to win an election. Trump is acting like a guy who wants to stay out of jail. And that is, I think, 100% correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that is dead goddamn on the money. That and that to me is the saddest thing about all of this, really, is that so many. If the majority of the people who voted for Trump, not because they think of themselves as racist or whatnot, but because they agree with his policy about a specific thing,
right?
That they have rationalized voting for somebody that they have to know is a crook, that they have to know has done so many illegal things, that they have to know is, I mean, the vast majority of the stuff the man has been accused of, just the preponderance of it, it can't all be a lie. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, just logically, it can't. There's got to be some smoke to that fire, right?
Right.
You know, and to decide that the fate of the nation, and in large part the direction of much of the world, should be dictated by a guy whose sole motivations are eat a burger, have an orgasm, watch TV, and roll around and convince people I'm rich.
Mm-hmm. On his golden toilet or whatever.
Exactly. That's the thing that you're happy to vote for. I don't get it.
I know. I think we'll never get it. But only 2 positive things for me this weekend. So one, everyone, 50th anniversary show on Saturday. Not sure when this is going to air, but because I'm going to actually try to push this out for tomorrow, but we'll see. But either way, it's available on YouTube. So I will link that. And 2, in line of Greg inspiring things and my activism, the mayor invited me to be on the task force for gun violence in a very primarily Black and Latinx community, that there's been a lot of shootings of underage, like 17 in the last few weeks. So it's like 30 community leaders, including like law enforcement and a lot of like huge people that have been really active in the community. And so I accepted, and I will be at that meeting, to my first meeting tomorrow officially. And I'm actually not just yelling about stuff now. I'm actually going to show up and try to do, I'm on the prevention subcommittee. So like how we can prevent, even just the gang violence, but also like awareness. And so that's because of you, Greg. And so that's what I mean about your influence. So these are all good things. So
that is wonderful. I hope it goes well.
Me too. I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but okay.
It's okay. But you don't need to know what you're doing. You need to know what you want to do.
Exactly. So I think it should be a really cool experience. So I will keep listeners posted. But in the meantime, I will link all these cool things that we talked about here. And if you're really bored, go read Lazarus. I'm going to get everyone in the world to read Lazarus. It's like my goal.
All righty. I have no problem with you doing that.
As always, thank you so much for your time
Is
and
good to
sharing
see
with
ya.
me, and love to the family.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers. That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Culture Chat and hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please subscribe and rate my podcast. Feel free to leave me suggestions or send an email to mimi@culturechatpodcast.com or follow me on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook.